Welcome back to Inside City Hall. My next guest has served as the Consul General of Israel here in New York for 10 years and is stepping down from the post in July. On Sunday, before the Celebrate Israel parade on Fifth Avenue, he joined Governor Cuomo as the governor signed an executive order directing state agencies to end all business with any group that aligns itself with the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel. Joining me now is Ido Aharoni, the Consul General of Israel in New York. Welcome. Very good to see you again.
Thank you for having me.
As I pointed out, you were with the governor when he signed this executive order. Was the executive order something you had suggested to him?
No, it was actually his own initiative, and we're very happy about it. We think it's very important for two reasons. The first is it's a deterrent. And the second, he sets the example for the rest of the governors, for the rest of the states in the United States. And we think it's a very, very important precautionary measure.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I wanted to ask you the extent to which the BDS, as they call it, movement is symbolic, or does it actually inflict real economic harm?
No, it doesn't inflict real economic harm, and I don't think it will inflict real economic harm on Israel. Israel has a very solid and sound foundation. Israel's performance economically, in terms of tourism, in terms of culture, is on the rise. We're doing much better every year, but that movement represents a very damaging idea, and for the uninformed, for the uninterested, this is a very dangerous notion that Israel is a country that is illegitimate. They look at Israel as an illegitimate political creation, and we cannot accept that narrative.
Prior to and sort of parallel with your work as a diplomat, you've been engaged in something that's called like sort of nation branding, right?
Right.
What's the Israel brand, and why is it even worth protecting? Why do nations try to brand themselves?
Well, nations try to brand themselves because nations, just like human beings, are not interested in being defined by their problems, deficiencies, weaknesses, and therefore, let's say New York in the 70s was defined and associated solely with two issues. One was crime and the other was police corruption. And it was Hollywood that branded New York as the world's capital of crime. But New York was determined to say, wait a second, it's true, we do have crime, we have to deal with it, but crime is not the only thing that defines New York. So they started celebrating their assets. They started celebrating their relative advantages. And they said, our biggest advantage is our size. Our biggest advantage is our diversity. So they came up with a strategy called the Big Apple, which is really the big temptation. So Israel is doing the same thing. We've done the same thing, highlighting Israel's advantage as a hub of creativity. And we're so happy that even New York recognizes that by inviting to New York an Israeli technology institution called Technion to establish a campus together with Cornell on Roosevelt Island, which is the crowning achievement of Israeli academic life.
I see that you are co-sponsoring tomorrow, as a matter of fact, a conference on the economic future of Puerto Rico. Is that more in that same vein of trying to sort of associate and affiliate yourself with certain kinds of discussions?
Absolutely. We asked ourselves, what is important to the Latinos in the Northeast? And we discovered that the Latinos in the Northeast are seriously and generally concerned with the future of Puerto Rico. And so what can we do for Puerto Rico, therefore? And the one thing that we can do for Puerto Rico is to bring or to create an opportunity for them to attract investors, to attract creative minds from Israel. So tomorrow we're sponsoring the first of its kind investment seminar where the State of Israel is sponsoring an event that is meant to attract investors not in Israel, but actually in Puerto Rico. Why? Because that's what friends do when they're in trouble.
Okay. You're going to be leaving after 10 years in a very difficult post. I remember the United Nations and Israel's role in the United Nations, in the 1970s in particular, into the 1980s, very combative, very ideological. There was a lot that was going on. How would you compare now to then?
Well, I think that the same transition is occurring across the board. We are now engaged in a much broader conversation about Israel. We're no longer limiting ourselves to a geopolitical discussion about who's right and who's wrong in the conflict in the Middle East. That's an important discussion, but it belongs to the department we call crisis management. And you cannot manage crisis your entire life. At one point, you have to grow. And the growth exists in other conversations. Now, when you look at the United Nations, When the organization was established in 1945, it had 51 members. It had a positive, optimistic outlook about the world. When Israel was accepted in 1947, it had already 56 members. Not all of them were democracies, but still, they were optimistic. They had a positive worldly outlook. Today, there are 193 nations. The vast majority of them are not democracies. The vast majority of them are tyrannies. So that optimistic outlook was replaced with a different kind of worldview. Unfortunately, not so optimistic anymore, not so positive anymore. And in many ways, the United Nations membership hijacked the original agenda of the founders of the organization. And Israel finds itself in an inherently built-in disadvantage in this arena. They basically can pass any resolution and every resolution against Israel as long as they have the majority.
When it comes to other issues outside of the Middle East, the sort of the big problems of the world, climate change and so forth, has the United Nations begun to sort of play second fiddle or in second place to some of the big organizations like the European Union?
Absolutely. I think that the United Nations is now in serious competition with other multilateral entities. You mentioned the European Union, but the European Union is a major player in the world, of course. But I think we need to pay more attention to the emerging role of multinational corporations, and especially the huge tech platforms. And I specifically refer to Facebook under the leadership of Mark Zuckerberg. I'm referring to Google under the leadership of Sergey Brin and Larry Page. I'm referring to Michael Bloomberg. I'm referring to people like Larry Ellison. I'm referring to people like Bill Gates. These are the people that have the ability to take on the big global issues. And I think that you will see more and more that they will be working with governments and sometimes even replacing governments. In the Middle East right now, we have many governments that are dysfunctional because of the regional wave of instability. And you will see multinational corporations, multinational technology companies entering this vacuum.
Okay, a very interesting set of predictions. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. Best of luck with whatever it is you end up doing after your career here in New York. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a short break now. Coming up, before the polls close in New Jersey tonight, we'll talk with Garden State politics. We'll talk about Garden State politics with WNYC Radio's Matt Katz. He's an expert on the subject. Stay with us.